Hello again. This lesson is over Module 4, Lesson 2, part of a whole as a percent. Our aim is KIPSers will be able to convert between percent and part of a whole or a whole. Key point number 1, a quick reference guide. To solve a percent word problem, first identify the whole quantity in the problem and then identify the part in percent. Use a letter, a variable, to represent the term whose value is unknown. We'll use that strategy for each question in our notes. You should also know that a whole equals 100%, which is equal to 1. And you should know a part equals percent times whole. Question number 1. In Ty's math class, 20% of students earned an A on the test. If there were 30 students in the class, how many got an A? First, we need to find our whole. So what is the entire quantity or the whole quantity? Well, the total number of students is 30 students. So our whole is 30. What is our part? We're trying to find how many got an A. We'll call this A students. What is our percent? Well, 20% of students made an A. In a variable, we can just choose any variable. Let's choose X. A couple questions. Is 30 the whole unit or part of the whole? What do you think? Good. 30 is the whole. That is the whole class. What percentage of Ty's class does the quantity 30 students represent? Good. This represents 100%. Remember up here we said a whole equals 100%. Let's move on to page 2. Okay, so this is the same question as the front, but here we're going to solve it, and I copied in the notes at the top. So let's see. Option number 1, 1% slices. For these notes, this is the only option that we're going to go over. And pay close attention because you're going to solve number 2 using this same strategy. The first thing you want to do is draw a tape diagram. Here is my tape diagram. So I can label this as being 100%, which represents the entire diagram. That's my whole. What's my part? Well, I need to mark off a part. And what percentage does this represent? Let's remember, hey, this is 20%. And we already know the whole, this 100% is equal to 30 students. And we want to know how many students is this 20% equal to. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to find the amount of a 1% slice. 1% is equal to what value? Well, if I imagine cutting this diagram into 100 different pieces, since the whole thing represents 100, I could cut this into like a whole bunch of really tiny, tiny pieces, and each one would be 1%. Well, I could say, hey, let's do the same thing to the number of students. Let's take the 30 students and divide that into 100 pieces. What number does that give us? Well, you could reduce this to, or simplify this to 3 over 10, which is 3/10. So another way you could say, hey, 1% is equal to 3/10, and if we write that as a decimal, it looks like this. 1% is equal to 3/10. Okay, we're almost there. We don't want 1%, we want 20. So we think, hey, 20% is equal to what? Well, it would be 20 times 1%, but we can use this number to say, hey, that's 20 multiplied by 3/10. Okay, it's 20 times 3/10 because it's 20 times whatever amount is equal to 1%. What does that equal? Well, if you do the math there, that equals 6. And our units would be students. What does this mean? This means there's 6 students who made an A. Now I want to check, is that reasonable? There's 30 students in the class. 20% made an A, which gives us 6 students. Well, 20% is a lot less than 100%. 6 is a lot less than 30. In general, that seems reasonable. If our calculation said something like 100 students made an A, we would say, well, that's impossible because there's only 30 students in the class. Okay, using that strategy, what I want you to do now is go ahead and find the whole, the percent, the part, and the variable. So you're doing this part of your notes for question number 2. Great, so for the whole you should have 25. Our part is going to be the number of perfect scores. The percent is 12%. And our variable, you can choose whatever you like. I'm going to choose X. Go ahead and create your tape diagram for number 2. Great, you should have a tape diagram like this. So we have a diagram, the entire thing is equal to 100%, which equals 25 art projects. And we need to find the part. Let's make a little part over here. The part we want to find is equal to 12%. Go ahead and find the amount of the 1% slices using the same strategy over here and solve for the number of students or the number of projects that earned a perfect score. Go ahead and finish number 2 now. Okay, so your 1% slice, we'd say this is equal to the entire tape diagram. Remember, we're cutting this into 100 little tiny parts where each part is equal to 1%. So we can take the 25 projects, 25, and divide by 100. What does that give us? Well, that would be 0 and 25 hundredths. So we can say, hey, 1% equals 0 and 25 hundredths. Well, now we want to know 12% is equal to how much? Well, this would be 12 multiplied by the amount that is equal to 1%. So 12 multiplied by 0 and 25 hundredths. So we need to do the math here. Let's see, 25 hundredths. I'll multiply by 12. 2 times 5 is 10, carry a 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Good. I cross out my 2 and I put a 0 to hold that place value. And I don't need that 1. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 2 is 2. And that's everything. I add these together. 0 and 0 is 0. 5 plus 5 is 10. Put a 0, carry the 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, but my answer is not 300. Remember, there's 2 numbers behind the decimal up here, so we need 2 numbers behind the decimal here. So 2 numbers behind the decimal, and our answer is 3. So this says 12% of these 25 projects is equal to 3 projects that receive a perfect score. So let me just pause and think, is this reasonable? Well, 12%, that's a pretty small percentage. There's 25 projects, 3 of them got a perfect score. Yeah, that seems reasonable.